Apparently, in Maple Ridge Estates, saving your neighbors in a deadly blizzard is now a crime. I just spent 18 brutal hours plowing snow for free, not one penny, digging out trapped families, an 83-year-old widow, and a Vietnam vet fresh from open-heart surgery during the worst storm in 15 years. Diesel still burning my lungs, boots soaked in ice. I'm dragging home past midnight when HOA President Victoria Pemberton charges across the street and slaps an orange violation notice against my chest.
$800 fine for unauthorized commercial snow removal,
She hisses.
Victoria, I wasn't charging anyone yet.
I don't care. People like you don't get to play hero in neighborhoods like this.
The frozen paper shakes in my numb hands as her words cut deeper than the sub-zero wind. But she has no idea who she just messed with. This war just got personal, and the real storm is coming for them. What would you do? Drop a, if you're glad you're not in this blizzard. My name's Jake Morrison, and 3 years ago I thought moving to Maple Ridge Estates was the best decision I'd ever made. Good schools for my twins, Megan and Tyler, both 16. The kind of neighborhood where Saturday mornings smell like bacon grease and fresh coffee, where kids still ride bikes in actual streets instead of hiding behind screens. I'm a union electrician, 22 years working with these calloused hands. Lost my wife Sarah to cancer 4 years back. 18 months of chemo that filled our house with the sterile, medicinal smell of hope mixed with desperation. The kids and I needed somewhere that felt like home again. Most folks here are decent. Mrs. Elise bakes cookies that smell like cinnamon and childhood memories. Bob Kellerman, Vietnam vet with gentle hands that shake slightly when he talks about the old days. Young families who wave from driveways while their toddlers chase soap bubbles across perfectly manicured lawns. Then there's Victoria Pemberton. 58, recently divorced, lives in the neighborhood's biggest house, a modest ranch that grew 3 additions like architectural tumors. Drives a white Lexus with HOA vanity plates because apparently irony is dead. This woman measures grass height with an actual ruler. I've watched her crouch in designer jeans, ruler pressed against her neighbor's lawn like she's conducting a forensic investigation. Victoria seized the HOA presidency 2 years ago, right after her divorce finalized. Word is her ex-husband got tired of living with someone who color coordinates spice racks and demands the mail be sorted alphabetically. Lucky us. Now we all get to experience her unique blend of control and barely suppressed rage. Here's where things get sketchy. Victoria's son Derek started Sterling Grounds LLC exactly 6 months after Mommy took power. Pure coincidence, I'm sure. Even purer coincidence that Sterling became our exclusive preferred vendor without any competitive bidding process. Their emergency snow removal rate? $250 per driveway. For perspective, that's more than I make wiring entire houses. I own a plow attachment for my F-250, bought it used 3 years ago with dreams of winter side money that never materialized. Last March, when surprise snow trapped half the neighborhood, I quietly helped folks dig out. Free. Because that's what neighbors do. Apparently that was my first crime. This February, meteorologists started screaming about historic blizzard conditions. 24 inches predicted, 50 mph winds, the kind of storm that turns suburban streets into frozen death traps. City announced they'd handle main roads only. Residential areas were on their own until it passed. I fired up the truck at 4 a.m., starting with our most vulnerable residents, Mrs. Elise's driveway slopes toward the street. Ice buildup means she's trapped until spring thaw. Bob's long driveway becomes a hockey rink without proper clearing. Young families with babies who might need emergency runs to the hospital. The work was absolutely brutal. Diesel exhaust burning my throat in sub-zero air, wind trying to flip my truck sideways every time I turned a corner. Snow falling so thick I navigated by porch lights and mailbox reflectors like some kind of suburban Arctic explorer. After 12 hours, my spine felt like broken glass. But every cleared driveway meant safety for someone who needed it. 47 driveways, 18 hours, turned down every payment offer, every invitation for coffee and warmth. Just wanted everyone safe before the roads became completely impassable. That's when Victoria made her move. Picture this. Designer snow boots that probably cost more than my truck payment, stumbling across ice I'd just cleared, nearly face-planting twice before reaching Mrs. Elise's freshly plowed driveway. The crunch of her expensive footwear on packed snow sounds like breaking bones in the frozen air. "Excuse me," she snaps, breath forming angry clouds between us. Do you have permits for commercial snow removal in this community? I'm standing there, diesel fumes mixing with bitter winter wind, staring at this woman whose son charges desperate families $2.50 per driveway while I've been working for free since dawn. Ma'am, I haven't charged anyone a penny, just helping neighbors. Victoria's smile could freeze hell's furnace. She pulls out her phone, starts photographing my truck, my plow, Mrs. Elise's cleared driveway. Click, click, click. We'll see about that, won't we? The fine showed up exactly 48 hours later. I'm stumbling out my front door Monday morning, coffee mug steaming in the 15-degree air, when I see it. Bright orange violation notice, officially sealed and everything, taped to my door like a courthouse summons. The adhesive crackles when I peel it off, brittle from the cold that seeps through my work jacket. Violation notice, Maple Ridge Estates HOA, resident Jake Morrison, 247 Elm Street. Violation, Section 4.7.3, unauthorized commercial activity. Fine amount, $800 salaries payment. Due, 14 days from notice date. Daily interest, 2% compound, $800, for helping people. The paper trembles in my hands, not from the wind howling through bare oak branches, from pure rage building in my chest like steam in a boiler. I spent my weekend digging neighbors out of a natural disaster, and these people want to fine me like I robbed their bank accounts. Back when Sarah was fighting cancer, I spent a lot of late nights reading legal documents, insurance policies, treatment contracts, medical billing disputes. You learn things during those desperate hours, like how HOA covenants are binding contracts that require clear and convincing evidence of violations. The magic phrase in commercial activity cases is compensation or payment received. No payment, no violation. Should be simple as checking a bank statement. I fire up my laptop and dive into the covenant documents. Section 4.7.3 specifically mentions any activity involving compensation or payment from residents. I've got credit card receipts proving I bought my own diesel fuel, 47 neighbors who'll swear under oath I refused every payment offer, every $20 gas money attempt, every invitation to warm up with coffee and cash. This should be a slam dunk defense. But Victoria's been planning her attack since the moment she saw me helping Mrs. Elise. Tuesday morning, my neighbor Tom Kowalski knocks on my door, breath forming angry clouds in the frozen air. Retired state trooper, built like a concrete mixer with 30 years of experience catching people in lies. He's holding an official envelope that smells like trouble. Jake, emergency board meeting Thursday night. You're the main attraction. The agenda makes my blood pressure spike. Discussion and enforcement of Section 4.7.3 violations. Commercial activity in residential zones. Victoria's organizing a public tribunal to crucify me in front of the entire neighborhood. But that's not the worst part. Tom hands me another document, a certified letter sent to every homeowner about the dangerous precedent of allowing unauthorized contractors in our community. Victoria's turning my free help into a neighborhood safety crisis. Residents should be aware that unlicensed, uninsured individuals performing services create liability risks for the entire community. Property values and resident safety depend on proper oversight of all commercial activities. She's actually trying to paint me as a threat to everyone's home equity, for clearing driveways, for free. Thursday night, the community center smells like burnt coffee and tension. Victoria arrives 15 minutes late, carrying a manila folder thick as a novel. She's wearing a navy blazer that probably cost more than my monthly utilities, hairstyled like she's running for mayor instead of conducting neighborhood business. Ladies and gentlemen, she begins, opening that folder with theatrical precision. I present photographic evidence of extensive commercial snow removal operations conducted without permits. My stomach drops as she spreads professional quality photographs across the table. Not phone snapshots, real pictures with timestamps, multiple angles, zoom details of my truck's plow attachment. She's been stalking me with a camera, documenting every minute of my 18-hour marathon like I was running a drug operation. As you can clearly see, Mr. Morrison operated commercial equipment throughout our neighborhood for extended periods. The commercial appearance alone violates community standards regardless of any claimed payment arrangements. She's got shots of me talking to Mrs. Elise, helping Bob clear his walkway, even pictures of neighbors offering me coffee that she's somehow twisted into business negotiations. The woman spent her entire weekend photographing acts of human kindness like they were criminal evidence. Board member Bill Morrison raises his hand, retired lawyer with eyes sharp as broken glass. Victoria, these photos show a neighbor helping during an emergency. They don't prove commercial activity occurred. The room explodes. Mrs. Elise struggles to her feet, all 83 pounds of righteous fury, voice shaking as she describes how I saved her from being trapped for days. Bob Kellerman talks about his heart condition, how shoveling that much snow could have killed him. Young parents share stories about getting sick babies to doctors because I cleared their driveways. The vote comes down 3-2, fine suspended pending investigation. I should feel relieved. Instead, I feel like a man who just dodged the first bullet in a long gunfight. Friday afternoon, I discover why. Taped to my mailbox like a declaration of war. Sterling Grounds LLC Emergency Storm Cleanup Assessment. $7,050 for lost revenue due to unauthorized competitive services. Derek's billing me for the business I supposedly stole by helping people for free. The absurdity hits like ice water. They're charging me for money they never made from services they never provided to people who never asked for their help. Victoria's war against me officially escalated the following Monday morning. First shot, a parking citation slapped on my truck's windshield like a yellow declaration of war. Commercial vehicle violation, residential parking prohibited. The fine? $250. For parking my own truck in my own driveway where it sat for 3 years without a single complaint. The irony tastes bitter as burnt coffee grounds. My F-250 suddenly became a commercial vehicle the day after I helped neighbors, but Victoria's landscaping crew parks their trailer-sized equipment on Crestview Circle every Tuesday morning without anyone measuring their commercial footprint. Second shot came Wednesday, a landscape committee citation declaring my front yard maintenance deficient. Apparently my grass was 3/4 of an inch too tall in February, under 2 feet of snow that still crunches underfoot when you walk across it. The woman cited me for invisible grass height violations during a blizzard. I'm starting to think Victoria has X-ray vision, or maybe she's just completely lost her mind. By Thursday, they'd revoked my family's pool privileges for the upcoming season. Something about residents under investigation being restricted from community amenities. Megan and Tyler lost their summer lifeguard jobs they'd counted on for college savings, because their dad committed the crime of helping neighbors. That's when Tom Kowalski knocked on my door again, this time carrying a banker's box that smelled like justice and old paper. "Jake, you need to see this." Tom's wearing the kind of smile that used to terrorize drunk drivers during his trooper days. "Been doing some homework in the public records office." Turns out Tom's been busy. 30 years of police work taught him how to follow paper trails, and Victoria left quite a trail. He spreads contracts across my kitchen table like evidence photos from a crime scene. Sterling Grounds LLC's exclusive snow removal agreement with Maple Ridge Estates HOA. The contract makes my jaw drop harder than January temperatures. Sterling gets paid whether they work or not. A $5,000 monthly retainer plus $250 per driveway for emergency services. The real kicker? A 150% markup clause for storm cleanup, meaning they can charge almost $400 per driveway during weather emergencies. "Look at the signature line," Tom says, pointing with a finger thick as a bratwurst. Victoria Pemberton signed as HOA representative 6 months ago. No board vote documented anywhere, no competitive bidding process, no community input meeting. She just handed her son's company an exclusive contract worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dr. Sarah Kim joins our kitchen strategy session that evening, bringing medical expertise and the kind of righteous anger that makes good doctors fight insurance companies. She treats half the neighborhood kids, knows every elderly resident's health history, and she's absolutely furious about what happened during the storm. Mr. Elise had chest pains trying to shovel their driveway, she explains, her medical training making every word precise as a scalpel. Mrs. Patterson threw out her back, clearing enough space for her car. 3 of my patients ended up in urgent care with weather-related injuries because they couldn't afford Sterling's emergency rates. While we're connecting dots in my warm kitchen, Victoria's launching her public smear campaign across the neighborhood. Anonymous flyers appear on car windshields like some kind of suburban propaganda. Is your neighbor running an illegal business? The accusations sting worse than wind chill. Suggestions that I might be casing homes while plowing, questions about my insurance coverage, dire warnings about liability issues with unlicensed contractors. The neighborhood fractures like ice under pressure. Team Jake includes families with children, elderly residents on fixed incomes, working folks who understand that helping neighbors used to be normal human behavior. Team Victoria attracts newer residents worried about property values, investment property owners, and her weekly bridge club, people who see dollar signs where others see human decency. The Nextdoor app becomes a digital battlefield. Victoria's supporters post essays about community standards and protecting home equity. My supporters share photos of cleared driveways, heartfelt stories about my help, screenshots of my refusal to accept payment. Comment threads stretch longer than winter nights. Then Victoria deploys her nuclear option. Friday afternoon brings a certified letter thick as a small-town phone book from Pemberton and Associates Legal Services. The envelope reeks of expensive attorney cologne and legal intimidation tactics. Cease and desist from all commercial activities immediately. Pay the $800 fine plus accumulated daily interest. Sign an agreement never to provide services to residents again. And if I don't comply within 7 days, they'll place a lien against my house. A lien on my home, where my kids live, where Sarah and I dreamed of growing old together. My hands tremble as I read the legal threats, memories flooding back to those nightmare months when medical bills stacked up like cordwood. We almost lost this house then, would have lost everything if Sarah's insurance hadn't finally covered her treatments. The thought of facing financial destruction again, this time for the crime of human kindness, makes the room spin. But my kids surprise me with their strength. Megan's been researching nonprofit law for a school project, diving deep into legal databases I didn't know existed. While I'm drowning in panic, my 16-year-old daughter discovers our first real weapon: Good Samaritan Act protections for emergency assistance providers. Tyler's been playing digital detective, stalking social media like it's his job. He finds Derek's Instagram bragging about storm cleanup specials during the exact blizzard when I was working for free. Photos of new equipment, captions about weather creating opportunities. Late Friday night, studying Tyler's screenshots and Megan's legal research, something clicks in my electrician's brain. 3 other neighbors got similar fines this month: Bob for unauthorized tree removal, Jenny for unlicensed fence repair, Mike for commercial pool maintenance. Every person fined has skilled trade experience. Every violation threatens Sterling's approved services. This isn't about rules. This is systematic elimination. Victoria's desperation started showing the following week when she called for a special assessment vote that reeked of pure panic. The proposal arrived in cream-colored HOA letterhead that probably cost more per sheet than my lunch. Community Safety and Standards Enhancement Initiative. $200 per household to hire private security for enforcement of commercial activity regulations. The timing was about as subtle as a sledgehammer. That assessment would perfectly cover Sterling Ground's annual retainer with enough left over for Victoria's mounting legal fees. But while Victoria was busy playing neighborhood dictator, cracks were forming in her carefully constructed empire. Wednesday evening brought an unexpected visitor. Cynthia Walsh, our HOA board secretary, stood on my front porch looking like someone carrying a secret that had grown too heavy for her conscience. She's a quiet woman in her 50s, keeps perfect meeting minutes, usually avoids neighborhood drama like it's contagious. Tonight was different. "Jake, we need to talk. Privately." Her breath formed nervous clouds in the frigid air between us. My kitchen table had become mission control for neighborhood resistance. Cynthia sat across from me, hands trembling slightly as she opened a manila folder that would blow Victoria's world apart. "She's been approving vendor contracts without board votes," Cynthia whispered, glancing toward my frost-covered windows like Victoria might be lurking in the frozen landscaping. "Sterling Grounds is just the beginning. There are 3 other exclusive deals running through her family network." The documents Cynthia spread across my scratched wooden table told a story of corruption so systematic it made my stomach twist like rusty wire. Victoria's brother-in-law owned the landscaping company with our lawn care contract. Her cousin ran the security firm handling gate maintenance. Her former college roommate's husband controlled pool cleaning services. Every approved vendor was basically a family reunion with invoicing capabilities. But the real bombshell was buried in Derek's monthly billing statements. Sterling Grounds wasn't just collecting snow removal fees. They were charging the HOA $2,000 monthly as seasonal maintenance consulting, $24,000 a year for Derek to provide expert advice on when winter might occur. I'm pretty sure any 5-year-old with a calendar could handle that consultation for free. Tom helped me crunch numbers in my garage that night, the smell of motor oil and righteous anger mixing in the cold air. Over 18 months, Victoria's vendor network had overcharged homeowners approximately $50,000 compared to competitive market rates. $50,000 stolen from fees that should have funded actual community improvements instead of financing Victoria's family business empire. The financial web was beautiful in its simplicity and disgusting in its greed. Every contract Victoria signed without proper board approval. Every bid process that mysteriously never happened. Every monthly payment flowing to businesses owned by people who shared her Thanksgiving dinner table. Victoria must have sensed the investigation closing in because she escalated from financial fraud to direct intimidation. Saturday morning, I discovered 4 perfectly slashed truck tires in my driveway. Clean cuts, surgical precision, each tire deflated like Victoria's credibility. The sound of air hissing onto frozen concrete matched the sound of my patience finally evaporating. Then Monday brought the anonymous letter, block printing on generic drugstore paper, no fingerprints, but the message burned like acid. Stop digging, or your kids learn what real danger feels like. That threat hit every protective instinct I possessed. Megan and Tyler catch the school bus every morning, walk home through streets I'd always considered safe as church pews. The thought of some coward threatening my children for exposing neighborhood corruption made my vision blur with rage that could power the electrical grid. I filed police reports, installed security cameras, and did what Sarah would have demanded, kept fighting instead of backing down. Tom's law enforcement connections delivered crucial intelligence. Victoria never filed conflict of interest disclosures with the state, a legal requirement when board members' families profit from HOA decisions. That violation triggers automatic removal from office plus financial penalties reaching 6 figures. While Victoria was busy making threats, Bill Morrison made a discovery that would have made insurance fraud investigators weep with joy. Victoria's homeowner policy specifically excludes coverage for her consulting activities. Every fraudulent contract, every kickback payment, every stolen dollar comes directly from her personal bank account when the lawsuits start flying. The woman thought she was untouchable, but she'd built a financial house of cards during hurricane season. Community pressure was building like steam in a boiler. 3 more elderly residents were hospitalized during smaller storms because Sterling's rates made emergency snow removal impossible. Local television interviewed Mrs. Elise about neighborhood support during disasters. Our Facebook group swelled with residents from other HOA communities sharing corruption stories that would make your hair curl. Thursday night brought the call I'd been dreading. Pete, my boss at Morrison Electric, asked me to come in early Friday for a conversation about community relations. Victoria had contacted my employer claiming my harassment campaign damaged their business reputation. But Pete surprised me. After hearing the complete story, free snow removal, fraudulent fines, systematic vendor corruption, he looked more disgusted than a health inspector at a roadside diner. Jake, you're the most honest guy I've employed in 28 years. Afternoon sunlight streamed through his office windows, highlighting dust motes that danced like tiny witnesses. Keep fighting. My mother deals with HOA bullies in Clearwater Estates too. Victoria had made a fatal error. She'd transformed a neighborhood dispute into a county-wide anti-corruption movement. The final hearing was scheduled for next Thursday. Victoria announced her lawyer would place liens on my property if I didn't pay immediately, but I had evidence that could bury her political career and financial schemes simultaneously. Time to show Victoria what happens when you threaten the wrong electrician's family. Friday morning changed everything when Tom knocked on my door carrying a legal document that would flip our entire war upside down. Jake, you need to see this. Tom's weathered hands trembled slightly. Not from cold, from excitement that made his voice crack like a teenager's. Found something called the Community Association Fraud Prevention Act. The coffee in my mug had gone bitter and cold, but I forgot about everything except the statute Tom spread across my kitchen table. This wasn't just bureaucratic paperwork. This was a legal nuclear weapon designed specifically for situations like ours. Any resident can file formal complaints for HOA board financial misconduct, and successful complaints don't just slap wrists. They trigger automatic state investigations with criminal prosecutors, asset freezing, board removal, federal mail fraud charges. But wait, Tom said, his grin spreading like sunrise over winter snow. Cynthia gave us something even better. The smoking gun lay in a manila folder that smelled like justice and copy machine toner. Unsigned board meeting minutes from the past 6 months. Every vendor contract Victoria approved showed the same damning pattern, her signature on approval documents. but no corresponding board meetings, no recorded votes, no community notifications required by state law. She'd been forging board approval for 18 months. "Look at these dates," Tom pointed with fingers that still bore calluses from 30 years of police work. Victoria signed Sterling's contract in January. The board meeting supposedly approving it, March 15th. She's been creating fake documentation after your complaint forced her to cover tracks. The legal implications hit my electrician's brain like voltage through wet copper. This wasn't just HOA rule violations. This was fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, criminal conspiracy. Every backdated signature was another felony charge waiting to be filed. My emergency lawyer consultation that afternoon confirmed Tom's analysis with language that made my pulse race. Victoria's actions constituted massive breach of fiduciary duty under state law. Board members have legal obligations to act in community interests, not family financial interests. The penalties: personal liability for all damages plus potential criminal prosecution. But here's the revelation that changed everything. I wasn't defending against Victoria anymore. I was prosecuting her. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Victoria thought she was fining me into submission, but I'd accidentally uncovered evidence of systematic theft from every homeowner in our community. Her vendor kickback scheme wasn't just unethical. It was criminal racketeering disguised as neighborhood leadership. The evidence package was growing stronger than reinforced steel. Tom's financial investigation documenting $50,000 in overcharges. Cynthia's authentic meeting minutes proving systematic fraud. Bill's insurance analysis showing Victoria's complete personal liability. My kid's timeline research connecting every piece of the conspiracy. But the real revelation was Victoria's desperation. The tire slashing, anonymous threats, attempts to destroy my employment. These weren't power moves from someone in control. They were panic responses from a criminal whose scheme was unraveling faster than cheap extension cord insulation. Her post-divorce financial situation made everything worse. Those family business consulting fees weren't just corruption. They were her primary income source. Without the kickback scheme, Victoria couldn't afford her mortgage, her legal fees, or the designer lifestyle that required constant feeding. She was trapped in a fraud too big to abandon and too obvious to continue. The Community Association Fraud Prevention Act gave me something Victoria never expected: legitimate government authority backing my complaint. State oversight boards can remove entire HOA boards, void all fraudulent contracts, and freeze personal assets during criminal investigations. Victoria had been playing neighborhood politics while I'd accidentally discovered actual law enforcement tools. Next Thursday's hearing wasn't going to be a kangaroo court where Victoria railroaded an innocent neighbor. It would be the public unveiling of an 18-month criminal conspiracy, documented with evidence that could satisfy federal prosecutors. I could take the easy path, trade evidence for dropped fines, avoid public confrontation, let sleeping corruption lie. But 47 neighbors had trusted me during that blizzard. Elderly residents were being systematically robbed by Victoria's vendor network. 3 skilled neighbors faced fraudulent persecution for helping their community. This wasn't about my $800 anymore. This was about stopping a predator who'd weaponized neighborhood authority for personal profit. Victoria wanted her hearing. She was about to get one that would end with handcuffs or bankruptcy, possibly both. The War Council assembled in my garage Saturday morning, breath forming angry clouds in air so cold it could freeze lies before they left your mouth. Tom arrived first, carrying a banker's box that clinked with surveillance equipment from his police days. Dr. Sarah Kim brought medical files documenting elderly neighbors' storm-related injuries. Bill Morrison showed up with insurance documents and a laptop loaded with spreadsheets that could make white-collar criminals confess. Cynthia Walsh slipped through my back door like a spy delivering nuclear launch codes. The concrete floor was cold enough to shatter drop tools, but nobody cared. We had a corrupt HOA president to destroy. "All right, people," Tom announced, spreading recording equipment across my workbench between socket wrenches and electrical meters. "Victoria thinks she's conducting Thursday's hearing. Time to show her what a real investigation looks like." Objective 1. Create bulletproof evidence. Tom installed professional-grade audio equipment that could record whispered conversations from across a crowded room. 30 years of police work taught him exactly how to build cases that survive hostile cross-examination. One-party consent state means Jake can record any conversation he's part of, Tom explained, running cables behind my tool cabinet with the precision of someone who'd wired 1,000 surveillance operations. But we're going belt and suspenders. Visible recording so nobody claims entrapment. Here's something most people don't know. Public records requests cost $5 to $25, but can reveal corruption that takes years to hide. I'd already filed requests for all HOA financial records, vendor contracts, and board meeting minutes going back 2 years. Government transparency laws are basically kryptonite for corrupt officials. Objective 2. Weaponize the financial evidence. Bill's insurance expertise transformed Victoria's kickback scheme into prosecutable criminal evidence. His spreadsheets compared Sterling's rates to 5 legitimate competitors, revealing systematic theft that would make federal prosecutors drool. Emergency snow removal market rate runs $80 to $120 per driveway, Bill said, pointing to numbers that glowed like neon accusations on his laptop screen. Sterling charges $400. Victoria's son is stealing 300% markup on every emergency call. The math was beautiful and damning. Over 18 months, Victoria's vendor network had overcharged our community $127,000 compared to competitive rates. That's felony-level theft disguised as HOA management. Dr. Kim prepared medical testimony that would make jury members want to personally arrest Victoria. 3 storm-related hospitalizations because elderly residents couldn't afford Sterling's emergency rates. 2 cardiac episodes from dangerous shoveling attempts. 1 broken hip when Mrs. Patterson slipped trying to clear ice herself. This isn't financial fraud, Dr. Kim said, medical training making her voice sharp as surgical steel. Victoria's pricing scheme is endangering lives for profit. Objective 3. Rally the community army. Cynthia had been conducting neighborhood outreach that would make political campaign managers jealous. Written statements from residents about my free snow removal. Testimonials about Victoria's abuse of authority. Documentation of other fraudulent fines targeting skilled neighbors. 89 signatures supporting fair vendor bidding, Cynthia reported, still nervous but determined as a mother protecting children. From 200 households, almost half the community backing you publicly. We organized carpools for elderly neighbors who wanted to attend Thursday's hearing. Mrs. Elise insisted on testifying despite her fear of confrontation. Bob Kellerman planned to discuss how my help potentially saved his cardiac-compromised life. Young parents would testify about emergency access needs during severe weather. Tom's law enforcement background helped anticipate Victoria's desperation tactics. She'd bring expensive lawyers to intimidate neighbors. She'd try excluding community members from hearings. She'd definitely attempt procedural tricks to avoid presenting evidence. Victoria's strategy will be claiming everything circumstantial, Tom predicted, organizing evidence binders like military battle plans. That's why we need smoking guns that fire themselves. Objective 4. Prepare the media nuclear option. Dr. Kim had contacted Channel 7's investigative team about elderly vulnerability during natural disasters. The story angle, neighbors helping neighbors versus corporate greed, would play perfectly for evening news ratings. Bill reached out to county prosecutors through professional insurance contacts. Financial fraud targeting elderly victims gets priority attention from law enforcement, especially when documented with industry-standard analysis. Here's another thing people don't realize. State real estate commissions regulate community associations and have power to remove entire boards for misconduct. One properly filed complaint with documented evidence can trigger investigations that destroy corrupt leadership permanently. Objective 5. Set the perfect trap. The evidence arsenal we'd assembled could satisfy criminal courts. 47 pages of documentation, USB drives with photos and recordings, written statements from 31 neighbors, professional audit showing systematic overcharging patterns. But our secret weapon was something Victoria couldn't anticipate, a community that had stopped being afraid of bullies. The smell of motor oil and righteous determination filled my frigid garage as we finished preparations. Tom's surveillance equipment ready for battle. Bill's financial evidence loaded for maximum damage. Dr. Kim's medical testimony prepared to break hearts. Cynthia's documentation ready to break Victoria's defense. Victoria thought Thursday would be her moment of triumph, publicly destroying the neighbor who dared challenge her authority. Instead, it would become the day her 18-month criminal conspiracy exploded in front of everyone she'd been systematically robbing. She wanted to play hardball with an electrician. Time to show her what happens when you mess with someone who knows exactly how to wire a perfect electrical storm. Victoria's desperation reached pathetic new depths Monday morning when she tried sabotaging the hearing with the subtlety of a wrecking ball through a china shop. The emergency notification materialized in everyone's mailbox like a plague of bureaucratic locusts. Urgent. Water main break emergency meeting. Thursday, 7 p.m., Community Center. Same time, same location as my scheduled hearing. What are the odds? Victoria was attempting to split my audience, confuse supporters, and bury my corruption hearing under manufactured emergency business. The woman had apparently decided that if she couldn't win fairly, she'd cheat so obviously it would insult a kindergartner's intelligence. Tuesday escalated with a bribery attempt that reeked of desperation and expensive attorney cologne. Some downtown legal shark in a suit worth more than my truck knocked on my door, briefcase gleaming like polished lies in the winter sunlight. Mr. Morrison, my client seeks quiet resolution of this unfortunate misunderstanding. The papers he handed me felt slick as snakeskin between my calloused fingers. All fines voided plus $5,000 cash for my inconvenience, in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement and agreeing to comply with community vendor approval policies. $5,000 to shut up and let Victoria continue robbing my neighbors. The bribery was so blatant it would have made organized crime bosses take notes. Victoria wanted to purchase my silence while simultaneously demanding I participate in her fraudulent vendor system, buy my compliance and my cooperation in one corrupt transaction. I'll need time to consider this generous offer, I told the lawyer, already knowing my answer, but curious how far Victoria's panic would drive her next move. Wednesday night delivered the answer with all the subtlety of a home invasion. 3 a.m. brought the familiar sound of air hissing from slashed truck tires. But this time, Victoria's crew had escalated beyond mere property destruction. An anonymous letter was taped to my front door, block printing on drugstore paper that reeked of cowardice and criminal stupidity. Last warning. Your kids walk to school every morning. Beautiful children. Accidents happen to families who don't know when to quit. The threat against Megan and Tyler ignited every protective instinct I possessed, like gasoline meeting an open flame. These bastards had graduated from financial fraud to threatening children, my children, for the crime of exposing neighborhood corruption. My hands trembled with rage that could have powered the electrical grid as I speed-dialed Tom at 3:15 a.m. He arrived in 20 minutes with police contacts and surveillance equipment sensitive enough to record mouse footsteps in attic insulation. But the security camera footage revealed something beautiful in its criminal stupidity. Derek Pemberton's truck, captured in high-definition glory, cruising past my house at 2:47 a.m. like the world's dumbest criminal. License plate clearly visible under streetlight illumination. Dashboard clock displaying exact time and date. The moron had created prosecutorial evidence while committing felony witness intimidation. Tom's police contacts treated written threats against families like the federal crimes they represent. They copied our footage, filed reports that would shadow Victoria's family permanently, and increased neighborhood patrols to levels that would make drug dealers relocate to quieter communities. Thursday morning brought Victoria's most desperate gambit yet. Pete called from Morrison Electric, voice tight with frustration that could crack foundation concrete. Jake, Victoria Pemberton and some lawyer just left my office. Claimed your harassment campaign damages our business reputation in the community. Demanded I fire you or they'd explore legal options against the company. Economic warfare. Victoria was attempting to destroy my family's livelihood for fighting her corruption. But Pete's response made me proud to wear Morrison Electric patches on my work shirts. Told them to evacuate my office before I called security and the labor board. Pete growled with satisfaction that warmed my chest like good bourbon. 28 years in business, never employed a more honest electrician. Also mentioned that threatening employee families might interest investigative reporters. Victoria had committed another tactical blunder. She'd transformed a neighborhood dispute into a business community crisis. Pete knew every contractor in 3 counties, and word travels faster than electricity when corrupt officials start threatening working families. The community response was building like thunderstorms before tornadoes. Mrs. Elise organized prayer circles for my family's protection. Bob Kellerman activated his veteran network for neighborhood security assessments. Young parents created carpools and walking groups, turning school routes into protected convoys. Victoria's intimidation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of terrorizing people into silence, she'd created community-wide resistance to corruption and threats. But Wednesday afternoon brought intelligence that made Tom's police instincts scream like tornado sirens. Private investigators were stalking my family. Megan spotted identical cars following her school bus 3 consecutive days. Tyler noticed strangers photographing him at basketball practice. Professional surveillance teams were documenting my children's routines and schedules. Victoria had escalated from financial fraud to systematic stalking of minors. That revelation crystallized everything. Victoria wasn't just corrupt, she was genuinely dangerous. Cornered criminals make increasingly desperate choices, and she was rapidly exhausting legal options. Thursday's hearing was supposed to be my public execution, but she knew the evidence would incinerate her instead. The bitter smell of winter air mixed with anticipation as I prepared for tomorrow's final confrontation. Victoria had threatened my children, attacked my livelihood, and hired strangers to stalk teenagers. She'd demanded this war. Tomorrow night, I'd deliver one that would end with criminal charges, financial destruction, and public humiliation. All three, if justice had any backbone left. Victoria's final week of freedom began with a social media assassination attempt that would have impressed Soviet propagandists. Fake Facebook profiles appeared overnight like digital cancer, posting elaborate lies about my character that read like soap opera scripts written by someone having a nervous breakdown. Jake Morrison bankrupted his family with gambling debts. Sarah Morrison died because Jake couldn't afford proper medical treatment. Desperate father exploits community sympathy for financial gain. Each lie was crafted to destroy not just my reputation, but my children's emotional well-being, attacking a dead woman's memory to cover HOA corruption. Victoria had sunk to depths that would make sewer rats request hazard pay, but her amateur hour propaganda war revealed something crucial. Victoria was operating purely on panic now, making mistakes that a clear-thinking criminal would never attempt. The fake profiles all shared IP addresses traceable to Victoria's home network. The writing style matched her passive-aggressive HOA newsletters. Most damning, several posts included details about Sarah's medical treatment that only someone with access to insurance records could know. Tom's cybercrime contacts were absolutely delighted. Digital harassment leaves permanent evidence trails, Detective Sarah Elise explained, reviewing printouts that would make prosecutors weep with joy. Every fake post, every malicious comment, every threatening message creates federal evidence. Victoria's building her own criminal case. Meanwhile, the pressure on my allies intensified like winter storms gaining strength. Tom received anonymous calls at 2 a.m. claiming his police pension was under investigation for corruption. Dr. Kim discovered one-star reviews flooding her medical practice's online presence. Fake patients claiming malpractice and billing fraud. Bill faced harassment at his insurance office, mysterious complaints filed with state regulatory boards about unethical business practices. Victoria was systematically attacking everyone who supported me, trying to isolate me by terrorizing my friends into silence. But she'd miscalculated the character of people willing to fight corruption. Dr. Kim documented every fake review with timestamps and IP tracking that connected them to Victoria's network. Tom's law enforcement contacts were tracing the pension investigation calls to burner phones purchased at stores near Victoria's house. Bill's insurance industry connections were investigating the regulatory complaints as coordinated harassment. Victoria was creating federal evidence faster than crime labs could process it. Wednesday brought my discovery of the bigger picture that made everything snap into focus like electrical circuits suddenly carrying full power. Research revealed Victoria had replicated her corruption scheme in two other communities over the past 3 years: Clearwater Estates and Maple Grove, both upscale neighborhoods where her family businesses had mysteriously secured exclusive vendor contracts under similar circumstances. Derek's company operated under different names in each county: Sterling Grounds in our area, Premium Property Services in Clearwater, Elite Landscaping Solutions in Maple Grove. Same business model, same family ownership, same fraudulent contract procedures. Total estimated fraud across 3 communities, over $300,000. Victoria wasn't just a corrupt HOA president, she was running a multi-county criminal enterprise using her son's landscaping business as a money laundering operation. Thursday morning brought contact that elevated everything to federal jurisdiction. FBI white-collar crime investigator Agent Maria Santos called my cell phone with news that made my hands shake like they were gripping live electrical wires. Mr. Morrison, your complaint triggered a broader investigation: mail fraud across state lines, racketeering patterns, systematic targeting of elderly victims. Victoria Pemberton's activities meet federal prosecution criteria. The certified letters Victoria sent demanding fraudulent fines constituted federal mail fraud. Her multi-county scheme qualified as racketeering under federal law. The threats against my family were federal witness intimidation charges. Victoria had accidentally promoted herself from small-town criminal to federal defendant. But Agent Santos delivered news that made my blood pressure spike into dangerous territory. Ms. Pemberton hired crisis management consultants and is preparing a narrative about disgruntled neighbor vendetta and harassment campaigns. She's planning to frame herself as the victim of a conspiracy. Victoria intended to walk into tonight's hearing claiming I'd orchestrated some elaborate revenge plot against an innocent HOA volunteer. She'd hired professional spin doctors to transform 18 months of documented fraud into a story about neighborhood bullying. The woman was doubling down on lies that could earn her federal prison time. But I had advantages Victoria couldn't anticipate or counter. Tom's evidence package included recordings of her son bragging about mother's influence in securing contracts. Bill's financial audit documented systematic overcharging with insurance industry precision. Dr. Kim had medical records proving elderly residents suffered because of Victoria's pricing schemes. Most importantly, Cynthia had delivered copies of all authentic HOA documents proving Victoria had been forging board approvals for 18 months. The community mobilization was complete. 127 neighbors planned to attend tonight's hearing. Local television crews were scheduled to cover the community corruption story. County prosecutors had observers ready to document public admissions of criminal activity. Victoria's hired crisis managers were about to discover what happens when professional spin meets documented federal crimes witnessed by an entire community. Tonight's hearing wasn't going to be a public relations battle between competing narratives. It would be the public execution of an 18-month criminal conspiracy, broadcast live to local news audiences and documented for federal prosecutors. Victoria had spent the week creating federal evidence while I'd spent it preparing her public downfall. The smell of victory mixed with February air as I loaded evidence boxes into my truck. Tonight, Victoria Pemberton would discover the difference between neighborhood politics and criminal justice. She'd demanded this war. Now she'd face the consequences in front of everyone she'd been systematically robbing. Thursday night arrived with the anticipation of a public execution and twice the audience. The community center reeked of burnt coffee and nervous energy as 150-plus people crammed into a room designed for 75. Local TV crews had transformed our neighborhood hearing into a media circus, professional lighting equipment casting harsh shadows that made everything look like a criminal trial, which essentially it was. Victoria arrived 15 minutes late in a black sedan with tinted windows, hired driver to avoid the gauntlet of cameras and angry neighbors clustered around the entrance. She wore a navy blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, hair styled like she was announcing her candidacy for mayor instead of defending 18 months of systematic theft. The manila folder she carried looked thin compared to the banker's boxes of evidence Tom and I had loaded onto the presentation table. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began, opening that pathetic folder with theatrical precision that would have embarrassed community theater actors. "Tonight we address the harassment campaign conducted by Mr. Morrison against your duly elected HOA leadership." Her opening gambit was pure fiction wrapped in victim narrative. According to Victoria's alternate reality, I was a bitter neighbor who'd manufactured an elaborate conspiracy because she'd dared enforce community standards. The woman actually claimed I'd been conducting a vendetta because she'd fairly applied HOA regulations. The audacity was breathtaking. Victoria was rewriting 18 months of documented corruption as neighborhood harassment, but I'd learned something important from my years as an electrician. When dealing with dangerous power sources, you don't argue with them. You cut the main line and watch everything go dark. "Thank you, Victoria," I said, standing with the calm confidence of someone holding a royal flush in a poker game where everyone else was bluffing. "I'd like to present some evidence for community consideration." The first poster-sized chart hit like lightning, illuminating a dark landscape, a timeline showing Sterling Grounds' contract approval dates versus actual board meeting dates. Victoria had been signing vendor agreements in January for board meetings that supposedly happened in March. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as neighbors processed the implications. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like electricity through copper wire. "These are the authentic meeting minutes," I continued, displaying Cynthia's smoking gun documents for everyone to see. Notice the complete absence of Sterling Grounds discussions in any actual board meeting. Notice Victoria's signature approving contracts that were never voted on. Victoria's face was shifting from confident politician to cornered criminal faster than a traffic light changing colors. Her expensive attorney was whispering urgent advice that she kept ignoring, desperation overriding professional guidance. "Mr. Morrison is misrepresenting internal board processes," Victoria started, but I was already unveiling the financial analysis that would end her. Bill's spreadsheet appeared on the projection screen like prosecutorial evidence in a federal courtroom. Sterling grounds, $400 per driveway emergency service. Market rate, $80, $120. Overcharge percentage, 350%. Total community theft over 18 months, $127,000. The visual impact was devastating. You could literally hear gasps echoing through the room as neighbors calculated how much Victoria's family had stolen from their HOA fees. "These overcharges funded Derek Pemberton's business expansion," I continued, showing photos from his social media accounts. "New equipment purchases during the same period his mother was approving no-bid contracts." Mrs. Elise struggled to her feet, 83 pounds of righteous fury that could have powered the building's electrical system. "Victoria, you took money from people who couldn't afford snow removal. People died because of your greed." The room erupted like a circuit overloading. Neighbors who'd been quietly suffering under Victoria's regime began sharing stories. Bob Kellerman talked about his heart condition and the dangerous shoveling he'd attempted because Sterling's rates were impossible. Young parents described missing work because they couldn't afford emergency driveway clearing. Victoria tried claiming misunderstanding and procedural errors, but the evidence was overwhelming and her explanations sounded like lies told by children caught stealing cookies. That's when Detective Sarah Elise and Federal Agent Maria Santos entered through the back door, badges visible and handcuffs ready. The official law enforcement presence transformed neighborhood drama into criminal justice. Victoria's face went white as copy paper when she realized this wasn't just a community hearing anymore. It was evidence gathering for federal prosecution. "Ms. Pemberton," Agent Santos announced, voice carrying the authority of the United States government. "We have federal warrants for financial documents related to mail fraud and racketeering investigations." Victoria tried to flee, actually tried to push through the crowd of neighbors she'd been systematically robbing for 18 months. The woman who'd arrived like visiting royalty was attempting to escape like a common criminal. The community center erupted in applause that could have been heard from orbit. 150 people watching corruption get handcuffed in real time. Local television cameras capturing every moment of Victoria's public downfall. The vote to remove her from the HOA board was unanimous, 147-0. The motion to void all exclusive vendor contracts passed without discussion. Emergency board elections were scheduled within 30 days. Victoria Pemberton had entered that hearing as neighborhood royalty. She left in federal custody, facing charges that would destroy her financially and potentially send her to prison. Justice, delivered with the precision of a perfectly wired electrical system and the satisfaction of a community that had stopped tolerating bullies. The smell of victory mixed with February air as neighbors celebrated in the parking lot, finally free from 18 months of systematic theft disguised as community leadership. 6 months later, justice had been served with the precision of a master electrician and the satisfaction of a community that refused to stay silent. Victoria Pemberton pled guilty to federal mail fraud, racketeering, and witness intimidation charges. Her plea bargain included 2 years probation, $50,000 in restitution, and 500 hours of community service. Ironically, helping elderly residents with home maintenance she'd previously overcharged them for. Derek's landscaping empire collapsed faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Federal asset forfeiture seized his equipment to pay victim restitution. His business licenses were revoked across 3 counties. Last I heard, he was working retail at a garden center, learning what honest employment feels like. The $127,000 recovered from Victoria's vendor fraud scheme became seed money for something beautiful, the Neighbor Helping Neighbors Emergency Assistance Fund. Mrs. Elise chairs the committee now, her gentle hands managing a program that provides free snow removal, basic home repairs, and emergency transportation for elderly and disabled residents. The fund pays skilled neighbors fair wages for helping community members who can't afford commercial services. Bob Kellerman runs our disaster preparedness training program, teaching families how to handle severe weather emergencies. His military experience and Victoria's painful lessons created protocols that keep people safe without bankrupting them. Dr. Kim established a nonprofit providing medical equipment loans, walkers, wheelchairs, hospital beds, for residents recovering from surgeries or dealing with temporary disabilities. No more elderly neighbors risking their lives attempting dangerous tasks because they can't afford help. The legal precedent my case established led to genuine reform. State legislators passed the Community Association Transparency Act, requiring competitive bidding for all HOA vendor contracts over $500. Conflict of interest disclosure laws now carry real penalties. Automatic board removal and personal financial liability. My story became a template for fighting HOA corruption nationwide. Tom created a free evidence-gathering manual that's been downloaded over 15,000 times. Bill's financial audit spreadsheet is used by homeowner advocates across the country. The toolkit we developed helps ordinary people document and prosecute corrupt community leadership. Personally, life got better in ways Sarah would have loved seeing. I was elected HOA president unanimously. First time in Maple Ridge history anyone ran unopposed. My platform was simple: complete transparency, competitive bidding, and community service over personal profit. Financial reports are posted online monthly. Board meetings are recorded and available to all residents. Property values increased by 12% after Victoria's removal, partly due to improved management, partly because positive media coverage attracted buyers who wanted to live in a community that fights corruption instead of tolerating it. Megan and Tyler earned full scholarships to State University. Their essays about fighting neighborhood corruption apparently impressed admissions committees who valued courage and civic engagement. They're both studying public administration, inspired by seeing ordinary people create positive change. The memorial garden we planted for Sarah became a community gathering place where neighbors actually talk to each other instead of hiding behind closed doors. Funded by grateful residents, maintained by volunteers, dedicated to the principle that helping others costs nothing but means everything. Tom runs for city council this fall on a transparency platform. Dr. Kim's medical practice expanded to include free quarterly health screenings for seniors. Bill started a nonprofit providing insurance education for elderly residents trying to navigate Medicare and homeowner policies. 6 months after our victory, Victoria's house went up for sale. The for sale sign in her front yard felt like justice served cold, but the new family moving in, young parents with 2 small children, represents something better: hope for communities built on mutual support instead of mutual exploitation. The ripple effects continue spreading. Documentary filmmakers are developing a feature about our case. Journalism schools use our story as a case study in community-based investigative reporting. HOA reform advocates reference our victory when lobbying for stronger oversight laws. But the best outcome isn't the fame or the legal precedents or the policy changes. It's Saturday mornings when I fire up the truck and plow driveways for neighbors who need help. No permits required, no fines threatened, no corruption schemes hiding behind community service. Just neighbors helping neighbors because that's what decent people do. Victoria Pemberton tried to fine me $800 for being human. Instead, she accidentally created a community that proves greed and corruption can't survive when ordinary people decide they've had enough.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.